It's Lisette, and today I'm inviting you to have lunch with me. I am going to make me a good old-fashioned ham and cheese sandwich. That's what I'm making. I have some chips right here, and I have some dip. And we're going to sit down. I'm going to go a little bit down memory lane with you so you can learn a little bit about me. So if you want to go on ahead and pause this video and go get some lunch and just sit, or maybe a snack time for you, maybe you're watching this in the evening time, whenever it is that you are watching this. It's been a while. I made a video like this about a year ago, and I decided to make another one. You're going to hear the birds chirping outside. It's a beautiful day. It is rainy, but it's beautiful. It's not hot. We've been getting some really cool weather, so it's been really nice out. So I'm just going to make a regular sandwich. I have some Western rolls. These round rolls, these are so good. So I'm going to make me a sandwich. You know, I was thinking, actually, I wanted to go down memory lane with you, and the reason I decided to make this video was because when I was a kid and we lived in the Bronx, I remember the schools used to hand out free lunches. They would hand out like a bologna sandwich. You get a little cup of apple juice, and you would also get like a fruit and a cookie or something. And I remember when the schools were giving out free lunches, we would get so excited because we would want my mom to take us to the school to get a free lunch. And sometimes they would give us extra lunches. They came in a styrofoam tray, and they would give us extra lunches, and we would take them home, and we would eat them throughout the week, and we really enjoyed it. Now, my parents fed us, so don't take it like they didn't. They fed us, and we all ate, but this was something special. This was something that the schools were doing for the kids in the neighborhood, and we were part of that, and we just really enjoy it. You know, a simple sandwich for lunch is all you really need. Just a simple sandwich. Now, I like to have leftovers. I'm going to have some mustard, and I do have to go shopping and get more mustard because we are very low on mustard. I ran out of the spicy mustard, which is one of my favorite. So I wanted to make a sandwich today. I like bologna. My husband's not really into bologna, but I like it. So when we go to, I think it's called bologna or bologna. Which one is it?
Bologna.
Everybody says it different. And I got my ham. So when we go to the deli or to the Amish store, we pick up ham, turkey, stuff like that. And I'll get like a quarter of a pound of bologna for me, because my husband doesn't really eat it, but I like it. So I'm putting some ham on here. Now I have some of this wrapped cheese. I'm not huge on the wrapped cheese, but it's okay. And I asked my husband to get yellow cheese the other day. He thought I meant this kind of cheese, so he picked this up, but it's fine. I like it. I mean, I eat it. Who remembers this? I remember when we were growing up, this is the kind of cheese we had, the yellow cheese that was wrapped. We had the Kraft cheese, which is really good. I'm gonna make that, and I do have a tomato. So we really enjoyed that time. We lived in the South Bronx when we were very little, and sometimes there was a church in that area where we lived. They were called John 3:16, and they would come over to our neighborhood and put chairs out, a stage, and they would have clowns. They would have treats for kids. And I remember looking out the window and watching them set up all Saturday morning, putting chairs out and stuff. And at this time, when we lived in the South Bronx, we lived on a very high floor. If I'm not mistaken, it was either 20 something floors. I couldn't be mistaken in the number. This was years ago. And I remember watching out the window and watching them set up. They had their speakers, they had their chairs, everything, and they would set all this equipment up. And then you see all the kids in the neighborhood. They would go outside, they would sit, we would watch a movie. That was the first time I saw The Cross and the Switchblade, which The Cross and the Switchblade was about rival gangs, and it was about a gang leader named Nicky Cruz and how he came to know the Lord, and how, what was his name? There was a preacher that went out from Pennsylvania, and he went to the city to work with gangs. And actually, a lot of these gang members became Christians, and they became saved. And Nicky Cruz was one of them. And that's how they started Teen Challenge, which is very popular now. And they help kids get off of drugs and stuff like that. So I remember watching The Cross and the Switchblade. in the streets of the Bronx. And that was the first time that I ever saw the Christian Switchblade, and it was David Wilkerson, which he's gone now. But David Wilkerson was the one that came to the city, to Manhattan, to help these gangs to get off drugs and to turn them to God. And then they started Teen Challenge. So that was one of my memories from when I was a kid that I remember, was having those special times. Now, we grew up in church. My parents took us to church, and we had I remember when we had the Christian parade, and I was one of the cheerleaders, and all the cheerleaders had pom-poms, and we wore, remember the white skippies? That's what we used to call them, the white sneakers that you tied up. And I just remember those great times. I remember the great times when my parents took us to Pennsylvania. We went to Dutch Wonderland. At that time, it was called Dutch Country. And they would take us to Manheim, upstate New York. And we went to a lot of different places, whether it was for my parents' ministry or different things that we did. And, you know, going down memory lane, it's a great thing. I have some chips. And I have the spinach dip from Aldi. This is so good. I don't know if you tried the spinach dip at Aldi. This is the specialty dip. That's the name of the company. And this is really delicious. And I have these chips. These are bite-sized round chips. And they're so good. So basically, I grew up in church. I grew up learning about the Lord, reading the Bible. I learned how to read Spanish from reading the Bible in Spanish. That's how I learned how to read Spanish. It was funny because in high school, I didn't do that great in Spanish class, believe it or not. But when I got older and I started working with children many years later, I taught Spanish. Go figure, right? How life comes around. It's funny. I am also drinking the Waterloo sparkling water. So what are some of your great memories? You know, wherever you grew up, maybe you didn't grow up in a city, you grew up in the country. You know, maybe you want to share some of those in the comment area so others can read. Doesn't have to be anything personal. You know, I share these things because growing up in the city kind of comes, you know, when you tell people I'm from the city or I grew up in the Bronx, you know, people have this, not everybody, but some people have like a bad connotation with that and they look at you kind of weird. But I have to say there was many great things I learned from growing up in the city. One thing I learned about was the Lord. And that's where I was baptized. And that's where God brought me into ministry. And to watch my parents also do ministry and my dad preach and my mom and them go to Bible Institute College and me get baptized. There was so many good things about growing up in the city. Anywhere you grow up, you could grow up behind a white picket fence. Having God in our lives is important. And that's one thing I learned, you know, when I moved to the country, when I moved to Florida years later. It doesn't matter where you go, there's things that are not good. There's drugs, there's sin, there's different things. Some places are a little bit more prominent. However, it doesn't matter where you're at. But I had a lot of good experiences growing up in the city. I had good ones too. Remember going to the Botanical Gardens and the Bronx Zoo. And if you have not been to the Botanical Gardens, I think you really would like it. I'm going to try a piece of my sandwich. I want to insert a clip at the end. I have a cardinal that the female cardinal. Now the female cardinal is a little bit more aggressive than the male cardinals. But she's been up here whistling all day. My pastor's wife gave me a flower pot, and the top of it is shaped like a heart, and it has a solar flower pot. It's really pretty, especially at night when it lights up. But I decided to use it for a seed holder, and it's great. And I've had the most pretty birds come over here, even though I have another a feeder, excuse me, not a holder. I decided to use it for a seed feeder, and that cardinal has been coming, sitting in there. She's been eating. She's been so happy. And the story of Nicky Cruz, if you haven't looked into it, you could actually find the movie on YouTube. It's called The Cross and the Switchblade. I think you really would enjoy it. Actually, the star in the movie is Erik Estrada. He's the one, if you remember Chips, that show Chips. Talking about Chips. If you remember that show, Erik Estrada was in the movie. He played Nicky Cruz. God can change anybody's life, even somebody in a game. No matter who it is, God can change their life just like he changed Nicky Cruz's life. His testimony is amazing. And he's gone all over the world and preached and helped with Teen Challenge. He's an older man now. I think he's in his 80s, probably older. But if you want to check out that movie, I think you really like it, The Crossing the Switchblade. Like I said, it's on YouTube, and you might really like it. People get this misconception that if you grew up in the city, you did drugs. You know, I didn't do drugs, and I didn't do any of that. Thanks be to God. Thanks be to God. Doesn't make me better than anybody else, right? Because a sinner is a sinner, regardless of what we've done or we haven't done. We all need Jesus. But I really enjoy learning about God growing up. I remember going and seeing like Shambach. He was actually a very popular evangelist back then. He's gone already too. And he would come and put up his tent. He was not from the city, but he would go to places like Chicago and the city and different travel all around the world. Kind of like Billy Graham, but Billy Graham was a lot more famous than him. It's not about fame anyway, but he was a lot more well known. And I remember going to his tent revivals when I was a kid and how much I enjoyed that. Till this day, I still remember what some of the sermons are about. You know, the Bible says that if you teach your children the word, it will never depart from them. They were always going to remember it. And I can tell you, there are things that I was taught by my parents, I was taught in my church, I've never forgotten. And I thank God for that. There was a chickadee outside just now. Yeah, so you got to try this dip. This dip is absolutely delicious. So I just wanted to share my lunch with you. Talk to you a little bit about memory lane. I remember the bodega. My favorite thing to get in the bodega, para ustedes que hablan español, for those who speak Spanish, we used to love to buy the pickles in the bodega. They had these big pickles like this. And we loved going in there. And I remember after church, my parents would go to this bread place that was right across from our church on the other side of the street. And my parents would go over to the bread place and they would get hot bread. I mean, you could smell it in the car going home from church. It smells so good. And the bread was like about like this. It was a loaf of Puerto Rican bread. It smells so good in the car. And sometimes my parents would pick up 1 or 2 loaves and take it home. And we would have it with hot chocolate, or my parents would have coffee with butter and cheese and bread. It was the best. That is a memory I've never forgotten. I kind of felt sorry for the man that owned that bread store because he got held up quite a few times. I don't know if he's still there. They have cleaned up a lot of the city, has been cleaned up. When we moved from the South Bronx, we moved to the other side of the Bronx, which was more north, near Pelham Parkway, near White Plains Road, that way. And when we moved there, it was a very nice area where we live. I went to a really nice high school at that time. It was a very nice area where we moved. And the apartment that we had was really nice. Really, really nice place. So yeah, there are some bad places in the city, but there are some really good places too, and really, really pretty places. So not every place is bad, or, you know, no matter where you go. Yeah, there are places that are prettier than others. They're not as populated as others, but there's sin wherever you go. And that's why it's so important to know what our children are doing, what our grandchildren are doing, where they're going, who they're hanging out with. And it's so important. And that's something that I saw, because even when we moved to Florida many years ago in the 90s, there was people that had money and they were doing drugs and they were doing that kind of stuff. So it depends on the life that we choose to live. You can choose to live a good life and give all your troubles and all your addictions to God, or choose to just wallow in your addiction and not get help. And it's very sad, because I see that stuff now. I see it with young people that are going through. I've heard around our area where there's been young people have OD'd because the drugs have been made legal, and just many things going on. And when I think of Nicky Cruz, I think of what God did in Nicky Cruz's life, and God can do that in anybody's life, no matter whose life it is. So if you have a child that's addicted to drugs, pray for them. You know, they're not going to want to go to rehab till they're ready to go. But you can still pray for them, because God can do miracles in anybody's life. He can do miracles in anybody's life. So this is just a little bit I wanted to share with you. But I thank God that He's always protected us. I thank God's always protected me, been with me. And you know, He loves you. He loves your children no matter what they're going through. Keep praying for them. Never give up on those kids no matter what. Because God will send, just like He sent David, God will send the right person to your children. Even your adult children that are having addictions or problems. Just like He did with David Wilkerson, and He sent them to Nikki Cruz. God will do that also for your children. Even if they've been in prison or been in jail, God can do any miracle in their life. You may not understand it right now, but God can turn their life around, you know. And I don't know who I'm supposed to share this, why I'm supposed to share, but I felt in my heart to sit down and have lunch and share it with you. And share a little bit about things that happen in the real life. And no matter where you live, there's good and there's bad. And we have to look out for our children, our grandchildren, especially in the times that we're living now, where nobody wants to take any kind of responsibility. We just have to really pray. Pray over your children. Don't give up on them. Pray for them. And just love them. And if, you know, if they just don't want to be around right now, just continue to pray for them. Because God will send that one person that's going to change that person's life. So God bless you. I hope you enjoyed this little lunch. I'm going to continue to eat lunch. And if you hear the birds out there, oh, it's a little chickadee out there. I'll talk to everyone in the next video. Bye.